For the most part, though, I was working with, like, the crossbow.
Same.
But I have unlocked the handgun. I didn't do the first, like, makeshift one because it said it was, like, a one-shot, and it's like, no, I'm trying to get to a thing with a clip. So I finally got to a thing with a clip, and I'm like, good. I wanted to start by doing some positive stuff and talking about...
Positive is good.
Yeah, I think so, because let's face it, we didn't spend all this time playing the game because we hate it. I don't tend to hate play things. I don't know about everybody else, but...
No, if I don't like a game, I generally go, well, I'm gonna refund this real fast.
Yeah, get it out of your hair.
Kind of the same, but usually it's with the demos, and I record a lot of videos for them for Steam Next Fest. And the ones I don't enjoy, I just delete the videos. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes trashing a game just because it's a demo.
Right. Demos, I usually will give a little bit of benefit of the doubt, just because it's not a finished product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can always jump into next Steam Next Fest because a lot of them update their games between fests.
It's true.
And that's one of hitting on demos as well. Early access games tend to change quite a bit sometimes as well. And since we are here talking about Palworld today, it is in early access.
That's
And
true.
considering the launch that this game has had and the general mostly bug-free nature of it,
Mostly.
like there are not any major glaring game-breaking. Like, this is not a Bethesda game.
No, it's not. No. I've encountered a few things, but it wasn't like the game just shut down or or soft locked on me or anything like that.
Yeah.
Same.
So considering that it's an early access launch and it's got as minimal bugs as it does, that's a pretty solid win right there.
It is.
And not only that, to pull the curtain back a little bit, as we're recording this game's only been out for 8 days.
Yeah.
And this game has taken the world by storm.
Yes.
Honestly, I could probably say without a shadow of a doubt, much harder than Among Us did.
Yeah.
And that game's been out for much longer before it blew up.
Yeah, that game wasn't new
it was
when
out
it got...
years before
Exactly.
It was out years. Second highest concurrent player count too.
Yes,
of all time.
its current highest player count is a little over 2 million.
Yep.
And
Which is
in
just
Steam,
bonkers to me.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, that's insane. And that was set on like Tuesday,
Yeah.
which is midweek.
Yeah.
And those are just Steam numbers. Like, we don't know
Yeah.
between other platforms.
That's the thing. It also came out on Game Pass, so anyone who has Game Pass, chances are they're playing it over there, either on PC or Xbox. And the number of people that have that are in the tens of millions. So we don't really know how many people are actually playing it over there.
The other side note, too, that's interesting is that PlayStation 5 players are all demanding that they get Palworld.
Yeah.
There are news articles saying that PlayStation players are up in arms over this, which is hilarious to me.
You know what I think it would be funnier is if you had Nintendo fans that were like, we need this on Switch.
No, the Nintendo fans are all up in arms that this looks too much like Pokemon, but we'll get into that later.
That's in the...
I wouldn't be surprised if some modder was able to port this game to the Switch.
Oh, yeah. That'd be interesting.
Who knows if Nintendo would let them do that, though?
That's going to be an interesting one. Although, I guess we can get into that in a later segment, too.
So we're talking about the good stuff right now.
We're talking about
the
the
positives.
good stuff. Yeah.
The good stuff.
In addition to just the sheer numbers of concurrent players, and I think it's at over 5 million downloads now. If I remember.
Over 8 million units sold.
8 million.
8, sorry.
And those are just Steam numbers.
That's Steam Ball.
And when you consider this as a $30 title at full cost, and it was sold at 10% discount on Steam for the first week, for $26.99. I think Klayton did the math the other day when it was only like 5 or 6
do it
million.
again right now.
Yeah, do that math again for us really quick.
The 8 million at the $26.99 introductory price.
Yes.
You're looking at almost $216 million.
Yeah.
This is a Japanese company, as we all agree on, and we know. So this is USD.
That's true.
This is 216 million US.
one of the things I was listening to was that the guys behind it, Pocket Pair, did not want to cut any expenses for the game. They were like, we're going to make this game and we're not going to cut any of the expenses for it. We're just going to make it what we want and spend the money because the guy that's behind it does some other stuff too. Like the director of that company. But I believe they said it cost them about $6 million USD to make the game.
Still not bad at all, considering what a lot of games cost to make. Yeah. Like Baldur's Gate 3 cost like $100
And not only that, it's not something you hear very often where a studio will say they're going to cut no expense and leave anything on the cutting room floor.
Right. And it's not a very large company either. It's very new.
It's really not.
Only has a few games that they've made.
It's not that new. It's newer than like companies you would consider established companies, obviously. But like Crave and I had played their previous game, Craftopia, which we didn't realize was the same company until I had been looking and just kind of curious, and I was like, oh, it's the same
just
company.
The other night you told me that too?
Yeah, and so we had played that when we first got together because it was like, oh, there's this game, it looks kind of interesting, it's crafting, and you could catch some animals in that as well, you could catch villagers in that. It's very similar to what they're doing here, but there's a lot more, the pals, there's a lot more of those instead of the giraffes and actual animals that were in Craftopia.
Yeah.
So it seems like...
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like they took everything they learned from Craftopia and just took it to the next level and broke the ceiling while they were at it.
Absolutely.
And before then, have either of you heard of Palworld? Like either this year or sometime last year?
Oh,
like...
I had. I had it.
How much of it did you hear about?
I had it on my wish list because I wanted to track it. I had seen some of the early release footage, and I had basically seen it, and I was like, did they put guns in Pokemon's hands? And then my thought process was, I gotta keep a track of this because I need to find out if they actually get to release this thing and what it's gonna be when they do. I just need to know. Yeah.
I think I might have seen like a trailer or some still images from it, and then I just filed it away in the back of my mind, and I forgot about it because there's so many other games, and you just move on as content creators.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
I had put it on my ignore list on Steam, I think, because I kept getting it in like discovery queues or something like that. I'm like, this game's not out, it has no release date, and like it looks dumb. That's what my initial thought was. I was like, I've tried so many creature collecting games and survival crafting games that seeing it just at face value, I went, I don't think this is something I would like.
Right. I was worried.
Did it exceed your expectations in that?
Yeah, it's much better than I thought it would be.
I was worried it was going to be a meme. That was my big thing. It's like it is
a meme, but it is not a scam.
Therein lies the thing.
As far as we know right now, as of today.
Well, I guess we're doing the good. So I'll say that they've that since I started playing, when I was like, seems like there's some glitches in here. They've done it, like, I think at least 2 pretty significant updates to it already that have fixed some of the things that I had a problem with immediately. So they do seem to be updating it. One of the things that happened to me early on, because I was playing on a controller, was that the context buttons were just showing up as blank boxes. So I didn't know what buttons to even hit. And in an update they have fixed that. So now I know what I'm actually supposed to hit when I do that. So they've been responsive.
I can tell you from playing Craftopia and having it in my library for the last 3 years that they do continually update even that.
That's good.
Like, when that game originally, when we had played it, it was instance islands. You would teleport to a different island, and then sometime this last year, they updated to a seamless map, which is essentially what they're using in Palworld. I assume they're doing that was also part of them having developed it for Palworld.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because that's what I said. I said it makes sense that they were going from the like single island maps to a giant seamless open world. If they were developing the technology for another game, they might, like, using what they learned from Craftopia, it would make sense to do it for both games if they're similar.
I would say for me that Palworld really scratches an itch for me that I really haven't been able to scratch since Valheim. Like, I get all the elements out of Valheim, plus all the capture elements, and actually having basically your own village of creatures.
Yeah.
And that is something I've heard other people say as well. Not necessarily the Valheim part, but like, I was listening to the Firelink podcast the other night at work, which is the guys over at Second Wind. And they were talking about it with a couple other guys. And someone's like, I didn't even like Pokemon, and I didn't like survival crafting, and I don't really like Pokemon that much, but holy shit, this game is scratching some kind of itch I didn't know I had.
Right.
Because they really took all these great elements from different games that we can all rattle off.
Oh, yeah.
That we've either played or know of.
Mm.
And they basically just smashed everything into one game.
Yeah. I think that's really the thing. To that point as well, I think the itch that you're getting scratched is a similar itch to what maybe a lot of people that are not necessarily Nintendo stands or have Nintendo systems are experiencing, because if you were a fan of something like Pokemon, there haven't been a lot of things to replace it. There was like Temtem and those kinds of things.
A few games that are trying to do what Pokemon does, but don't really capture that same energy or same vibe.
Yeah.
Temtem, for instance, I did tried it for a while, and it just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I get that. The thing that's interesting, though, about Palworld, though, is that for everybody who says it's too much like Pokemon, not in structure for the game itself. Because there's a lot of things that you really like about it. One, I like that actually your combat and even the catching devices, it's all in real time. It's all when you're playing the game. It's no turn-based combat, no special screens. So it feels much more interactive, where you're trying to, hold on to, target the creature and throw the ball and see if it hits, and watch in real time as it starts to become the capture rate and gets up to 100. You get to experience that, and then you also get this fun part where if you like survival crafting games, or if you've played any before, you get to do that, but with a landscape that will remind you of kind of Breath of the Wild, and with monsters that will kind of remind you of Pokemon, and that adds to a whimsy, like a certain charm to it that you don't usually see in a lot of survival crafting games. You don't get that in, like, Ark, even, or Rust. Those seem very dour and depressing a lot of the times.
I've seen a bunch of people say that that Palworld reminds them of Ark. And I, as someone who tried to play Ark and hated it, do not see the comparison.
It's on my wish list, but I've never picked it up when we're talking about Ark.
It's free.
Yeah. But to go back to your catching these pals in real time, you're not just because it's all situational.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're not fighting just one at a time, and you're trying to catch the one you want.
Yeah.
There's a big mammoth that roams around in different zones, and there's even a boss one. Mm-hmm. And I fought 3 at once, just trying to capture one. And I'll tell you what, that fight was wild.
Yeah.
Because you're just trying to focus on not dying, or trying to whittle down the other two, and either knock them both out, you just focus on one.
Couple pals that are fighting with some of the human NPCs, the syndicate thugs and whatnot, and so you'll have like 3, 4, 5 a camp of thugs plus like 4 pals, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then you got to make the decision of, okay, do I? They're gonna beat down this pal pretty quickly if I don't stop them, so I can slow them down, and if I want this pal, I can go after it too, because they've already done the work for me.
Oh yeah.
I just murder everyone.
Yeah. That's what I normally do.
Yeah, just get everybody. You can do that. And it usually works.
It's easy loot.
Yeah, it is. I like the idea that the characters in the game are interacting with each other that way, and that you never really know the positioning of things when you get into even areas that you've been to before. You end up with different kinds of encounters, and just some really interesting random moments. Those mammoths that you mentioned before, one time they just ended up wandering through my camp. Yeah. And I was just like, what's going on? And then all of my pals decided to attack it, and then I ended up in this big fight where they all got knocked out because that
happened.
Yeah,
that happened in our base too, and we had to set up the bell so they don't interact with them. They don't defend the base during that.
Yeah,
because those mammoths can cause a massive amount of damage.
Oh yeah,
and I'd rather just let them wander through than just mess everything up.
Oh,
because when they got into a fight with all my pals, they knocked out like half of the pals. And I was like, all right, now I gotta swap them out. Because now I lost 6 farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll be lucky if they don't destroy your base while they're at it.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes in the wild, you can get lucky. You see them fighting each other, and you're just like, I'm gonna sit back and watch. I'm gonna wait till they get a little bit low, and then I'll tag them and try and capture them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will say, I don't know if either of you had played Scarlet or Violet for Pokemon, or Pokemon Legends Arceus.
No, I did not.
Both
I think
of
Black
those...
2 and White 2 were the last ones I played.
So
no, Sun and Moon, I'm sorry.
That's fair. I have both of those. Like Pokemon Legends Arceus was actually pretty fun for what it was doing, and it was more of an open world kind of thing, but you didn't have to. It was a little too easy, I think, as well, because you didn't have to like weaken the Pokemon to catch them for a lot of it. It was just kind of like, oh, Pokemon's a new thing. You can make them your friends, whatever, catch them and whatnot. But it had the open world elements to it that are fun, that you guys were talking about. But again, it was not quite the same thing. Like, you're not attacking them yourself. You're not pulling out a gun and shooting things. It is very different. The biggest issue I have with those games comes down to the fact that they are on the Switch.
Right.
And that is the most limiting part of those games, is that they are on a piece of hardware that does not have the ability to support the game in what it should be.
Yeah. Again, that's kind of one of the reasons I think Palworld hit so well, is because it's not on Switch. It's on PC. People can play it on their PC.
Yeah, I can play it at 144 frames per second as per my refresh rate on my monitor, and I'm not struggling.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Switch is generous at 30 frames per second sometimes.
On that note, like, we have a tendency to talk about this in terms of, like, Pokemon. I think that it's also worth talking about it in terms of a little bit like more Breath of the Wild for the traversal part, for the exploration part, because that's the look and the feel that I was getting from it when you get to actually traverse the world, which I actually very much enjoy, especially once you get like flying mounts and stuff. Happens far sooner in this than I think in a lot of games do. Where you get to actually like climb up these giant hillscapes, and I have a specific bird that is my glider now, and you get to like traverse over really long chasms with them. They do a really good job.
The views you can get from those bases are just phenomenal. Like for you, it's Breath of the Wild. For me, I equate that to playing New World, because I played that when it first launched.
Okay.
And I played that game ad nauseum. That's how much I enjoyed it. And I stopped playing World of Warcraft for a couple of months because of that game.
It does feel like the environment is a lot more immersive with you. Whether it's not necessarily with the soundscapes, because as we get to the bat, I'll probably touch on some of that.
Me too.
But the amount of things that are there in the world, and the way that the monsters interact with each other and the other players, and say, I found a wandering merchant that was getting attacked by thugs, maybe, I think, or pals, and I saved them, and they're like, hey, you got here in the nick of time, thanks.
Yeah. It feels much more of a living environment. I think the last time, actually, that I really saw a game that tried to do that was probably even Skyrim. Like, that idea of having a world where it's all just kind of happening around you, and then you enter into it to be an almost disruptive force in this ecosystem that has been built for you. That's the kind of experience that I was getting from it. We probably should not forget to mention that there are indeed guns.
So, do either of you use firearms yet in this game?
Yes.
Yes. For the most part, though, I was working with like the crossbow.
Same.
But I have unlocked the handgun. I didn't do the first like makeshift one because it said it was like a one shot, and it's like, no, I'm trying to get to a thing with a clip. So I finally got to a thing with a clip, and I'm like, good. Finally, you get the problem was that I was running out of ammo really quickly, so I'm actually back with a bow because I had so many arrows.
I use a direwolf as my main pal.
Yeah.
And I power level a bunch of other pals with me up to a certain level, and then I recycle them into the box and bring out new ones.
Mm-hmm.
I use him with my crossbow, and I save more arrows now because I'm usually riding him, because you can use his abilities while you're riding them.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is
That's
absolutely
great.
Amazing. It's such a great feature to have.
Mm-hmm.
I wish more games had that, like your World of Warcraft and
Yes.
your New Worlds, you know. It is really refreshing to have that, and you can be like, maybe I'm farming for like the elemental glands, so I gotta kill certain fire creatures, or certain water creatures, or certain electric creatures. I can just run up to them, use his ability, mow them down, save an arrow.
Right.
If there's multiple targets, I can use his ability to use one and hit the other one with a crossbow bolt.
Right.
Have you either of you ridden the deer?
No, I have
No,
not.
but someone in our group does ride the Ecther deer
Yeah.
as their ground.
It is brutal.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Because the charge attack it's got, it's far, it's fast, it's far, and it flings them
Oh.
when you attack.
I would hate to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, it's a brutal one. It's not as fast as the direwolf, but it is brutal.
I was thinking, I wonder if I can do this, and it turns out you can. You can prep your pal sphere in your one hand and like hold it on your target, and you can fling other abilities while you have that targeted, and see the percentage go up, and then you can let it go. Yeah, I found this out. I was like, hey, I wonder, and I'm like holding it down so that your pal sphere is here. And then you can use the monster's attacks while you're riding on it, and you can see the health go down and your percentage chance go up, and then when it's in the place you want it, then you can throw it while it's basically equipped.
I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, try it.
When I try, I think I might have actually tried that once, and my character got stuck like that. Like, you permanently holding and throwing
or you just
pow ball
swap
after
out
pow
your
ball.
weapons.
No, even then. And then
Oh.
you mentioned, I think you mentioned, because you were watching my stream the other night when I was doing it, just jump off the mount. I actually did that off stream, and it did not work.
Oh,
well,
I actually had to exit out and reload the game.
Rip.
Shoot.
Go to sleep. Sleep in the
Yeah.
bed.
Sleep in the bed.
I hadn't tried that. That would be
yeah.
a good one to try too, to see if that works as a workaround. It's an 8-day-old game.
Exactly.
It's gonna have bugs.
Yeah.
And it's early access.
Other thing that I wanted to mention too, the base building. I
yes,
think
please.
a lot of the base building mechanics are probably going to be very familiar for people if they've played any kind of survival crafting. What I really liked, though, is the ability to use the pals to do different tasks around the base, which is not something I always see in survival crafting. And it takes a minute for you to get used to it, but then you're like, oh, I get it. There's different tasks that can be done at different workshop posts, and those have different ratings for different monsters. And so I know that, for cooking, I need to get fire types, because fire types can do kindling abilities. So now I gotta see if I can find some of those to do that. And so that ended up being like a little loop in itself for me of figuring out
it too.
Yeah, what kind of pals do I need here in order for me to get this to work properly so that I don't come back and everything's still just on the stove because nobody knows how to cook for shit.
Why are all my plants not doing anything and sitting there? Oh,
yeah.
I don't have anyone that's planting
Can't
or
water. You can't water anybody. Why is it that I don't have any wool? Oh, right, I forgot. I don't have any wool producing pals in the place, so I gotta do something about that. Why is it that they're harvesting so much wood but no stone anymore? Oh, right, I had to trade some people out. So so that's like a whole like managerial task inside of the game that you find out about fairly early on and then just keep expanding upon, which I think is just very interesting and much more interesting than how most survival crafting games do it, which is just you gotta go back to camp and use all of the crafting stations and do stuff, you know?
The thing I like is that they will also both defend your base while they're in there, which is nice, because if people come to attack, which happens a lot in survival games, so, you know, your base will get attacked and you're out there and who's gonna defend it? They will defend it, and you can get guns and machine guns and crossbows to help them defend it.
Right.
The other thing I think is nice that if you're in base while they're doing these tasks that they just do, like they're planting, they're harvesting, they're watering, you will gain passive XP.
Yes. Yeah, you will.
Yes.
Yeah. And so do the ones that are in the base too. They gain levels too.
Yep. I would say that I really enjoy the base building for this game. Does it need work? Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are certain pieces that I hope that they add in the future that would really flesh out and round out certain base building types that we do. Like, you don't have corner pieces or 90-degree pieces yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they add that in the future.
Right.
I do like the managerial system that they added for the bases. Your pals can basically live their best lives, running around, crafting, gathering, planting, watering, you know, sleeping. But you also have to take care of them too. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna put a bunch of pals in a base, let them go off, and I'm gonna run off and do whatever I want for the rest of my life. No, they'll eventually get lazy. They could run out of food if they're not bringing enough food, and you're not bringing enough food for them when you go out for whatever you do. And not only that, they can get injured. They can get incapacitated. They can get sick. You have to have
get depressed.
medicine for them. Yeah, they can get depressed.
We haven't even talked about the sanity meter. They all have a sanity meter on them.
Which I think is actually a really unique thing that they added to the game too. Like, you have that in games like Don't Starve.
Yeah.
You know, where you have the sanity meter, and if you go crazy enough, then you see the shadow monsters in that game.
Right.
But for this one, they just become less productive, and it's all about managing the good with the bad in your base. You build relaxing stations for them. You build that water pond for them. When you get better materials for crafting, cooking food, you can make food that decreases sanity at a slower rate and stick it in their food bins.
All of a sudden, it becomes like Roller Coaster Tycoon or something, where it's like, now I have to do the management. Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, in a sense, but it feels more of a hands-off management style to me, where it's like, you set up the stuff, you set up the station, you set up your certain pals. You're probably going to want to focus more on gathering pals in your base instead of workstation pals, especially in the early going. Because if you're just in the base yourself, maybe you're dropping off, you're organizing your bags, you can toss one of your pals out to help and work at a crafting station.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you while you're streaming the other day. I'm like, I usually throw someone out while I'm in base to do some extra tasks.
Yeah.
It's like you're sitting there building a bed and some other stuff in there, and like, you got someone with handiness, just toss them out and let them build.
Let them build. I also really appreciate that, like, if you say I'm going to be building something, you put something down, all the pals that can actually build will just drop what they're doing to come and do that, and just fix it. So that you can just get it built.
I'm going to be honest, that is a really wholesome thing to watch them do.
Oh, they all come and help. Yeah, they all help.
I will say,
when they complete it, how happy they look, and they all look at you.
They're so pleased. I will say, I want to touch on that part as well, again, in the bad part.
Okay.
Slightly. Just tangential to it.
But I did want to also mention, I know it's the thing that ended up being the most controversial part, but honestly, I did want to put in the positive about monster design. I think that overall, the monster designs were pretty good, and the style works for me. I think that it actually looks very expressive. A lot of those characters look very expressive, and I think that they did a good job. The fire types especially, I really like the angular design that they did for them. It is very reminiscent of something like Pokemon, but the designs that they have are nice designs. They don't look half-assed as designs. That's the thing.
wouldn't necessarily agree with that 100%. Some of them look like they could have used a little bit more work on the drawing board. But for the most part, I overwhelmingly agree with you for the most part.
Right.
That they got a lot of good designs to them.
There's a few where you're like,
you can say that it looks like it either is copied or took inspiration from Pokemon. But you could say that about almost any other creature for any other game.
Right.
What is the most common creature that you see in monster games? The slime.
Electric mouse.
And how many variants do you see of slime in a lot of different games?
That's true. That's true.
We'll talk about that a little bit more in the last segment too, I think. So
Right. But I wanted to just touch on the fact that I think that overall I liked the style and the look of the monsters, and I think that it works for the game.
And they got some really interesting ones that come out, especially during the nighttime. If you happen to play during night instead of just sleeping, like you normally would in games like this. With like, you should go to sleep to make a day. No, maybe in the beginning, sure, until you get set up enough, and you want to brave the night. There are some really interesting creatures that come out at night. My favorite one is probably the Daydream.
Oh yeah. That's a nice.
I have a lucky Daydream.
The Depresso that roams around.
Some of the names for it I thought were easy.
If you watch Depresso when Depresso is mining,
oh my god,
Depresso looks so uninterested and feels like they would rather be doing something else than just picking at a rock slowly.
I pointed that out the other day because we had one on base that was mining, and I just started laughing and I looked at the girlfriend and I said, "Could you look at this Depresso mining for a minute?" And she just kind of looked over. She's like, "Oh my god."
Which makes me want to go out and get other creatures that can mine and do stuff and just see how they engage with the environment that you build for them.
Yeah. And I think that that's the other thing, too, when I'm talking about character design, is that the way that they were designed lets them be very expressive when you set them to tasks and when they do things, and you really see them be angry or depressed or mad at you or downtrodden.
Yeah,
that they have a lot of personality.
I feel like the pals all definitely have personality to them.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Grintails?
Yeah, I have one. I have the Grintail.
Their eyes actually light up when there are enemies nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, it's in the description of them, but it actually does it. It's not just we added a description, it's a thing that we're going to say. Mm-hmm. Yeah, their eyes will glow.
That's really cool.
And they're just, I have one, all they do is gather, so they just kind of lumber around base all gritty and just kind of dopey looking. But then they're like, ooh, time to gather. Boom, boom, boom.
Yep. Yeah.
And they're just so happy. And it's like, that one's so silly, because you can ride it, too.
Yeah.
And it's just ridiculous. But that thing reminds me of a cross of Cheshire Cat meets, like, My Neighbor Totoro.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. That does have a certain stylistic part.
Yeah.
It's great that they have these personalities. It really just gives more to that living, breathing environment that you're playing in.
Yeah.
Where the world just doesn't feel static around you. It absolutely feels alive.
Right. It makes the whole experience feel a lot more vibrant and alive, and just even the color palettes that they use that really make it, because so many times, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've played a few survival crafting games in my time, and so many of them really love the color beige. Like, they really love this, because they're mostly set in, like, these kind of, like, dystopic worldscapes where it's harsh and it's rough, and it usually ends up becoming just desert and rocks and just worn down, dirty buildings that nobody's lived in for, like, 50 years. And it kind of just looks depressing and drab most of the time. And that's definitely not a word I would use for Palworld's landscape. It's very alive.
Lush island.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of survival games fall into that trap of doing it. But I think the game that does the best with it would again be Don't Starve. Because that's literally built in the entire environment of the game.
Yes.
And how much it's changed and grown over the years. Like, you could jump in and jump out of that game months at a time, and no two plays are going to be the same, because you're going to approach it differently each time. And I kind of feel like it'll be the same with Palworld too. Because if you joined community servers, or if you join your own world or a friend's world, you gotta start over from level 1. Your approach might be different going into each world, and I really like that. I like that you don't bring in a souped up character like you would in Terraria, and just mow everything down like it's nothing. I like that you have to start over again.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like about that is the fact that I have stuff on my solo playthrough that I would love to be able to be like, I want to show you this pal, and I want to trade him to you, and so we can breed him on a different playthrough.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be interesting if they added something like that into the game where you could trade between worlds. There's like maybe like a console or something.
Sure.
Because Pokemon has the GTS. I don't know if that's still a thing these days. But
I think so, but who knows?
Yeah.
But that's how you could trade with random players around the world.
Yeah.
Right. If you did something like the vaults that they had in like Borderlands, you know, where you put all your guns and your shields and everything, you put them all into the vault, and if you pick up any other character and you play it on your account, you know, you just go to the vault and it's all there.
I think that would be okay if it was just a PAL vault.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
not
I don't
for
think
items.
being able to trade like guns and armor, I don't think that'd be okay.
It would also work for the PALs because they level adjust even if they're higher levels. So
yeah,
so that's why that would be okay.
Yeah,
I think we've praised Palworld a bit enough currently. I think we need to move on to things that are not as great about Palworld.
Oh boy, I guess it is about that time.